We have a saying on this show that conspiracy theories are simply spoiler alerts, right? That in a few months, we normally see the truth. It started out perhaps as a conspiracy theory, but then it unfolds, and guess what? We get the truth. What sounded like a conspiracy theory, I think maybe a couple of years ago, that the idea that a friendly grandfather-looking guy named Anthony Fauci would help fund and then lead the largest crime in world history, perhaps. And then it would be covered up and hidden by the biopharmaceutical industry and world governments through censorship and lockdowns and all manner of cover-up. That the United Nations would admit with its backers and the World Economic Forum that its collaborators with big tech companies like Google and Facebook would bury the truth so that you don't get to learn what's actually going on in the world. That they would actually finally admit that they're spiking search results on everything from climate change to the pandemic. Watch.
We partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. We own the science, and we think that the world, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. But again, it's a huge challenge that I think all sectors of society need to be very active in.
Oh, okay. So the United Nations picking what search results we get from everything from climate change to vaccines and everything else in between. Thank you. Thanks to the United Nations for keeping our search results clean.
Well, she owns the science and also the platforms, which she means the search engines.
Right. So that was a conspiracy theory, right? That started out, right, as a conspiracy theory that, wow, these global elites are actually controlling what we're allowed to see. And then the United Nations, they actually admit it. They tell us right in front of our faces what it is, when the truth about it. That climate was only one of the things that they partnered with Google to prevent you learning about. Well, we now know that that's all true. Well, then this next story sounds like an even crazier conspiracy theory that after a global pandemic forces, millions of people into government-mandated lockdowns, hundreds of thousands of businesses destroyed, lives ruined, hundreds of billions of dollars in profits for the biopharmaceutical complex, that they would try to do it all over again with the very same people who led it the first time, almost as if it was a trial run, that first pandemic. Well, Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, Peter Strzok, all of them, and the biopharmaceutical industry, they would be actively working on the real pandemic because the first one was just a trial run. It was just a
dress rehearsal.
Beta test, right? For the real thing that was actually coming. It sounds like a movie, but of course it's not. It's all true. It's not a conspiracy theory at all. We learned this week that researchers at Boston University produced a new strain of COVID that is 80% deadlier than before. They did it with your tax dollars. We covered this when it broke a few days ago, but now we're learning who's behind it, and it's incredibly disturbing. But first, we'll have some context here. So this was the Boston lab. Researchers at Boston University who are now trying to walk this back, even though they already published their research and now Congress is looking into it. So the researchers combined the spike protein from Omicron to the original Wuhan strain, which produced a new strain of COVID that is 80% deadly. They used human-mouse hybrids. So they have the exact same response on human beings. That's why they use these human-mouse hybrids. Can you imagine how freaky that is? Human-mouse hybrids?
No.
But that's what they use, so that they know that this is exactly the same response on humans. Remember, Omicron was the one that attached itself to everything. Remember how sticky it was? We kept hearing how sticky Omicron was. It was pretty weak, actually, but it was highly contagious. So if you got Omicron, not a big deal, we were hearing, because you probably get it. Everyone's going to catch it, but it's pretty weak. It's like getting the sniffles. That's what we heard about Omicron, right? Mm-hmm. So what if we took the original strain of COVID that was actually pretty strong, and then we added it with the spike protein of Omicron, and we made it way more contagious? Well, how quickly could this spread? Well, just look at the CDC's own chart. This is from the CDC's own chart. And I want you to look at the deep purple on the right side of your screen. That is Omicron. and how quickly it would spread. Of course, this was in December of 2021. This is how quickly Omicron spread in December 2021 into January 2022. So that purple is the vehicle that they're using to deliver this new deadly virus in their research. Smart move, right? They took the fastest, most contagious one and slapped it on there. We now know that the work of this Boston lab was supported by a grant from the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, specifically from the NIAID, which is the organization that Dr. Fauci leads. During a Senate hearing on May 11th, Senator or Dr. Rand Paul, whatever you'd like to call him, specifically asked Dr. Fauci about the funding of gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the potential link between the COVID-19 outbreak and the lab itself. Gain-of-function, of course, is when you take an existing virus to the lab and then you give it some sort of enhanced abilities, like Steve Rogers getting a super soldier serum. He goes from a wimpy kid into Captain America. Highly risky, very dangerous. This is how the liar responded to that question.
Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they fund
of
Dr.
Virology.
Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
Okay. Well, we now know that was a lie.
Do you remember that Obama administration made gain-of-function illegal, and then Fauci begged Trump to remove that, and that was actually removed and made okay again?
Right. So this was illegal. This was illegal for a number of years. Exactly right. And the NIH admits then, after this little interlude, that no, in fact, they were funding risky research in Wuhan. So the NIH then admitted that, oh, yes, they did indeed fund that gain-of-function research. And yes, that back under the Obama administration, Fauci had directed funds from the NIH to gain-of-function research in North Carolina. And it was later moved to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And oh, yes, according to the evidence, the EcoHealth Alliance in New York City that received funding from Fauci was working with the Wuhan lab, creating a highly contagious bioweapon. Whoops, we forgot to tell you. So I was just lying to you in front of Congress. And he still has a job. He's not been fired. He's also still, to this day, the highest paid government official. So then when questioned on this, after this release about the Wuhan Institute of Virology and this news from the NIH that they admitted this, Dr. Fauci was asked the question again. Maybe now he would admit to it. Watch.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
Right. Well, it was illegal. I say it was illegal for gain-of-function research to be taking place after the United States government placed a ban on it in 2014, as Dave just pointed out. Then the U.S. government banned gain-of-function research, which singled out viruses that caused the flu, which had or caused severe acute respiratory syndrome, and the MERS virus because of their deadly nature. That's why it was banned. It was stopped. But then...
Well, and I want to point out really quick, too, that that's potentially why they were doing research in Wuhan, and we found all those labs in Ukraine, because if it's illegal here, it wasn't illegal over there.
Yeah, well, you move it from North Carolina, You move it out of the country because now it's illegal here.
And we only found out those labs because of happenstance, because of events that shone light on those places. So where else is it that we don't know about?
Right.
Where we're not looking.
Right. So then the U.S. government in 2017, 3 years later, the NIH quietly started doing it again to flu viruses, gain-of-function research. But they would have to be reviewed by the NIH before they could proceed with this. Oh, okay. Here then is the problem. So Boston University's study was approved in March 2020 and funded by Dr. Fauci.
Wait. The one that you were talking about that we found out about this week was approved?
Yes.
Oy.
The Boston University study was approved in March 2020 and funded by Dr. Fauci and the NIH.
In fact, when we talked about this story just a few days ago, we showed you the credits, as they will, the thank yous in the abstract of that study, which does mention the NIH.
Right. And you can look right here on on Boston University's website today. Put that back up there if you would, Philip. This is the one you just had up a second ago. Yeah, that one. Here it is. Right on Boston University's website. You can go to Boston University's website right now and read all about the funding from the NIH, funding of the Boston University, led by Dr. Fauci. Oh, and hold on a second. Hold on a second. While you're on that website, while you're there, you might be interested to also just kind of poke around on Boston University's website to find out who else was funding Boston University on this research. That's it.
Get the heck out of here.
Bill Gates. I mean, you can't make this shit up, guys. It's right there on their website. And we know through the grant programs that, in fact, yes, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation continues to fund these gain-of-function research at Boston University and the NIH. So there's one major problem with this March 2020 date. Dr. Fauci was sitting before Congress telling us that he and the NIH were not funding gain-of-function research. So let's hang that date out there for a second. March 2020.
Oh, you don't have to remind me. That's the start of the pandemic for most people in the Western world. That's when everybody went into lockdown.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it right.
Well, I was going to say that document that you showed earlier that showed when Omicron took off, that was well after this. And they got approval to test Omicron?
Very good.
Specifically?
Boston University files the application to do this research in March of 2020, according to CBS News today. Locally, a spokesperson for the Boston Public Health Commission says it's now reviewing application materials from the study's scientists to confirm that the research was conducted in conformity with protocols that they were properly overseen. The commission approved a proposed research protocol submitted by the scientists in March 2020, the spokesperson said. March 2020.
How did they know anything about Omicron?
Very good.
In March 2020.
Maybe this chart will help maybe jog your memory. You guys are already too smart for me. But here is the chart. So March 2020, go back March 2020 on that chart. It's before this chart. There is no such thing as Omicron in March 2020. So their research included taking the highly contagious Omicron variant and attaching it to the original strain of COVID, which kills 80% of their subjects. That's what their research paper says in their just published results. The problem is that when they applied for this research, Omicron didn't exist. We didn't learn of Omicron until almost 2 years later. Again, look at the purple. December 2021. That's when we learn about Omicron. That's when we see this massive uptick and highly contagious Omicron. So they approved this in March 2020. Here's the statement given to CBS News today from Boston Public Health Authority on this, from the Boston Public Health Authority spokesperson. The Boston University Institutional Biosafety Committee, Boston Biosafety Committee, and Boston Public Health Commission approved this research protocol in March 2020 after full review of the proposed research and under the condition that the lab follow all applicable safety controls, including CDC guidelines. for handling COVID-19 and those imposed by the Boston Biological Laboratory regulations to protect public health and safety. The Boston Public Health Commission is in the process of reviewing all application materials related to this study to confirm that the research was conducted in conformity with protocols and that they were properly overseen. So this begs the question then, which we still don't have the answer to at this hour, what was the proposed research? At the very moment when the world was going into lockdown, you were given a gain-of-function approval for COVID research at Boston University? Under Dr. Fauci's office? Dr. Fauci's office says they didn't know about this research this afternoon.
Well, now
really?
they're saying there are people calling for an investigation into this very study. So we will be able to see whether they name Omicron by name or they somehow otherwise identify the strain in a way that is equally identifiable to Omicron, or if it was an abstract, as if we would like to take a more contagious strain if and when some comes out, and we'll wait for that. I don't know. The only thing that gives me any kind of like maybe wiggle room in this statement is the word protocol. Like maybe they just sort of approved the idea of the study before they knew what the next virus was.
But the problem with this protocol and the problem with all of that is that it needs to, if they end up doing or changes and it becomes highly risky or highly viral, they need to then have approval. And they need to get approval then from the NIH.
Okay.
And Dr. Fauci's office. So that has to be reviewed and approved according to these protocols. Nevertheless, it changed from whatever it was in 2020, and they got approval at the height of the pandemic, right when everything was going into lockdown, and we were being told that no gain-of-function research was happening in the United States. They were lying to us, and the people that were lying to us are still out there doing it again.
Well, and I remember I got it in 2020 of February, and I could not even find a place to get tested. I could not find a place to get anything. Vaccines weren't even out yet. Like, this is pre-everything.
Yeah.
So will Dr. Fauci go to jail for this? For perpetrating one of the greatest lies ever told? I mean, because if you think about it, if he didn't know this, then what kind of a leader is he of his own office who's approving gain-of-function research in the United States?
Or his lackeys
illegally?
underneath him are doing something that's incredibly dangerous and he doesn't know. That doesn't jive.
Right. So then you should be fired for that. And if you do know, you should be fired and also prosecuted criminally. I mean, think about the millions of people whose lives either lost or ruined as a result of this.
Mm-hmm.
He should be charged criminally just for the fact that he tried to block not Berenstein. What was the documents that came out from those other scientists that had a different idea of how this could have been handled? And looking in hindsight, if we would have listened to those scientists, things would be completely different.
Yeah.
So he was already busted with emails, when we got them, they were all redacted and everything. So that alone, he should be jailed.
Well, somebody needs to hold his feet to the fire for sure.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, we do have a new film out today about the real Anthony Fauci, just released this afternoon. Of course, the censorship is overwhelming on that. It's based on the book by the same name, but it's the film version of it. It's totally free right now, so you can actually watch it for like the next 10 days for free. By the way, the link, you can't even find the link because according to the filmmakers, they've already been deplatformed and blocked. So even like doing Google searches, it's almost difficult to find. So when will Dr. Fauci go to jail for this? When will he be criminally prosecuted for this? The greatest lie ever told, and arguably killing millions of people as a result of this. Again, it's all one big cabal, and Ursula von der Leyen today is being held to account as well for these shady contracts with Pfizer. And why were so many doses, these contracts put together kind of privately and through text messages, and they're calling now for the resignation of EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen. Watch this.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, Ursula von der Leyen must immediately and unconditionally resign from her position as President of the European Commission due to the fact that her actions are currently criminally investigated by the European Public Prosecutor's Office. EPPO just announced a few days ago that is investigating the way the contracts were signed between the European Commission and the producers of vaccines. And this is what the Court of Auditors just stated in a report released a few days ago, and I quote, "The Commission has signed, up to November 2021, 71 billion euros worth of contracts on behalf of the member states to purchase up to 4.6 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses. That means that she purchased 10 doses of vaccines for every EU citizen based on contracts that were never released to the public. This is how the contracts that she signed with these pharmaceutical companies were released to the public. How is this possible in the European Union that is called to be transparent with the way it's using people's money? So I'm asking again and calling again for immediate and unconditional resignation. Thank you.
Will that happen? Will that happen?
Well, then think about it. We have to, in order for people to opt in from the UK for a newsletter, you have to have all kinds of disclaimers for the UK for your,
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you a little something about European bureaucracy. It does not happen over text message. Nothing is easy in Europe. You cannot even, nothing, zero. We know this because we are residents, and to get each paperwork is like you have to drink a bottle of wine after you try one little single bureaucratic task.
Right. Your whole day will be taken up by going to the DMV.
And so there is no circumstance under which the European Commission would acceptably exchange deals surreptitiously on text message. It doesn't drive with the way that we live here.
No.